What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleash, the weekly panel discussion show. As always, have a fantastic panel. You're used to these two gentlemen, but we love them so much, we're going to introduce them all the time, as we do every week. So first up is the jack of all trades who has mastered them all. He is the senior editor of Sherdog.com and my man, Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on?
I'm doing real well, man. We had an interesting weekend of fights. Some other things happened in the sports world, over the last few days.
Go Braves.
So, yeah, go Braves. This will be a fun one.
Yeah, should be interesting. All right. So if I wish I were a baseball fan so I could put on my Dodgers hat and just get all angry and stuff. Yeah, really mean it. This would be a total act. But there's a lot of sad people around LA right now as a result. And of course, the panel every week is anchored by the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com. Also, my good friend, Mr. J. Petr. Jay, what's going on?
I'm spent. This was a weekend that had too many fights on it. This was a weekend that had 4 shows counter-programmed against one another. The UFC, Bellator, Glory, and KSW all ran at the same time. That's too many. That's too many cooks. And then there was Rizin.
And Rizin is like dessert at an all-you-can-eat buffet. It's fine. I'm sure it's good, but I just don't want any more.
And BKFC had something going on this weekend too.
BKFC had something going on too.
Yeah, and then if you follow pro wrestling, I know there was a lot of pro wrestling going on too. So it was a very, very busy weekend for combat sports.
I didn't. I don't. I originally was going to write up my stat of the week. I was going to be counting all the number of fights that happened, but I lost track because they all blended together. So we got to talk about the most important thing to me this weekend is that number 40 happened. Why did 40 happen? How did 40 happen? Because Fedor Emelianenko has won 40 professional MMA fights. Fedor. What can I say?
I mean, all-time great, a legend, arguably the greatest heavyweight to have ever done it. And let's talk about that a little bit more. The main event of, was that Bellator 269? I believe I'll get that number correct. He knocked out Tim Johnson about 2 minutes into the bout.
Did he ever?
An amazing performance in front of the home crowd of Russia. If you were the Bellator matchmaker, what would you make his final MMA fight now? Because they were kind of billing this as his final fight. It felt sort of like a retirement moment, but we know the truth. We know this is not going to be the end for Fedor. What's next?
My answer is same as if Johnson had beat him. Keep him out of the line of actual contention because there's no point giving the guy a title shot if he's about to retire, and make the Josh Barnett fight happen, or bring him in against another winnable fight against a fellow legend of his generation. Same answer as if Johnson had beaten him.
Well, I mean, keeping him out of contention is a difficult proposition when you consider he knocked out the number 2 ranked Bellator heavyweight. And while we have gone on the show many, many times to, just poo-poo on Bellator's ranking system, despite the fact that we love and respect many members of that panel, how do you not make Fedor a factor for the belt if he just knocked out the number 2 guy?
Well, the problem is that the number 1 guy knocked him out in 10 seconds.
Yeah, he did.
Ryan Bader destroyed Fedor. If it were someone else with the title, maybe you give him the retirement title shot, but the fact that it's Bader there just makes it ugly.
Before I weigh in, Ant, I do want you to speak your piece.
Okay. Oh yeah, because I'm thinking Bader hasn't had the easiest time since that Fedor win. He's gotten knocked out smooth a couple times since. So it's not unreasonable to expect something maybe a little different if the two were to match up again. You put the belt on the line and the definitive retirement bout, whatever that means in mixed martial arts. I'm intrigued. I think that might have some legs. Does that sound like the next move that Bellator could be making?
Well, Mr. Walker, it just so happens that I think I figured it out over this weekend. I was very proud of this. So Fedor knocked out the number 2 guy. Number 1 is obviously his training partner, interim champion, Valentin Moldavsky. Number champion is Ryan Bader. So here's what Bellator does. They give Fedor the Bader rematch for the title. They skip over Valentin Moldavsky for the time being, and Moldavsky would probably be okay with that because it's his his coach, his mentor, and his final fight. It's all the makings of that will make sense. You put it in Arizona. Scott Coker has already said he wants to bring an event back to Arizona. The Footprint Center, it worked very well in Phoenix, which is Ryan Bader's home area. So you put Bader in Arizona. Fedor has said goodbye to Japan when he fought Rampage. He said goodbye to Russia when he fought Tim Johnson. Now he'll say goodbye to America when he fights Ryan Bader for the disputed heavyweight championship belt. And what will happen is that Fedor will knock Ryan Bader out. He will retire, therefore making the interim champion, Valentin Moldavsky, his protege, elevate to the active current undisputed champion. And that's how Fedor can give a gift to his student. He can say goodbye. He can retire with the belt and not hold it up because it will stay in his team.
I like it. And the alternative is Bader knocks out Fedor all over again.
And then there's the revenge element.
Exactly. Then you've got a built-in storyline that might intrigue some people to watch a fight that otherwise probably wouldn't ring the bells too hard. Ben, are Jay and I just talking pure nonsense, or is Barnett the way to go still?
Well, I'm fine with Jay's scenario. I think the latter outcome is more likely. I mean, yes, Bader has been getting sparked by 28-year-old light heavyweights. I don't think that necessarily translates to him not being able to handle Fedor at this point. Like, I think if they run it back, it's another like brutal win for Bader. But I could see them going that way as one of the rare cases of Bellator coming up with a win-win proposition in a high-level fight. Like, their matchmakers don't always achieve that, but Jay just sold it pretty well that either of those outcomes is not unpalatable.
So that means they're going to make him fight Chet Congo in Israel then.
And and especially if this is going to be Fedor's goodbye to America, don't make it the Barnett fight.
Exactly.
Because Barnett will piss hot again.
Well, no, I don't think no, honestly, truly, I don't think he'd be able to get licensed in the first place to be able to be hot. I think he has actually exceeded his US punch card of popping.
I mean, there's still JDS out there. If you can lure him away from AEW, which I don't think would be too difficult considering this is Fedor we're talking about. There's still who like Overeem. He got scratched from that Glory match, but I'd imagine it wouldn't be too difficult to lure him back as well. So there are options outside of the tried and true like title shot. But damn, a title shot sounds so good right now, and sounds like a perfect way to cap a obviously very, very legendary career. And I can't believe it's 2021, and I'm all for Fedor fighting for a belt against a person that has already knocked him out. And Fedor, I was there, I saw it. I was like 15 feet away from this happening, and here I am, asking for more. I am a sick man.
At 45 years young, Fedor Emelianenko, is a legitimate top 15 heavyweight in the world right now. And he earned it by doing what he did to Tim Johnson, a top Bellator guy. It was no fluke. There was no, he took a fall. Did you see Tim Johnson's head bounced off the canvas?
Yeah, I mean,
there ain't no fall.
He got sparked.
And Fedor's hands looked faster than they've looked since it's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen that level of speed. Even it was early in the fight. It was 100 seconds. It was what, a minute 40. So we don't know how he would have played out longer. Those were fast hands.
I mean, it was 3 or 4 years ago that he knocked out Frank Mir in about that much time, but they both looked slow and sloppy in that fight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Fedor looked way sharper against Johnson than he did against Mir.
Or you think about like the Mitrione fight and how wild and just completely technically void it was. That was not the Fedor that we saw.
No, I don't think so.
You know what, fellas? Before, because I'm gonna deviate from our lesson plan just a little bit here, because Daniel Cormier said something very interesting.
What did Daniel Cormier say?
Daniel Cormier said, I mean, granted, we always talk about something Daniel Cormier said, but this time he said something about Fedor that sounds kind of like it's something that we would have agreed with. I think, prior to the Tim Johnson fight, but now it's like, it just doesn't. It seems like DC's off on this one. He says that if Fedor came to the UFC in 2009, he would have been average at best in the heavyweight division.
In 2009 is when he iced Arlovsky, though.
And Tim Sylvia right before that.
And Tim Sylvia, like, I think that might have been 08, but still.
I'm saying, though, like, please kill me in the comments if I'm wrong in this. In fact, I'll try to do a quick search on that, but I could have sworn that he said that. He said 2000.
So UFC employee Daniel Cormier said that Fedor Emelianenko and Bellator wouldn't be good back.
I mean, he also says there's no problem with fighter pay. So, hey.
Well, naturally. Everybody's getting paid exactly what they should be paid.
Of course. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. And considering now we're like, if we are to take rankings seriously, which obviously, of course, we're going to trash them whenever the opportunity arises, you got to put Fedor as a top rank heavyweight in the world at this point. So,
I need to look back at the rankings to really do some digging to make sure. I'm pretty sure Fedor was at the top of the ladder in 09. I believe he was number 1, number 2, maybe.
Was the champ at the time, right?
Yeah, I wasn't part of the rankings system then, but I would have ranked Fedor over Brock Lesnar in all of New York second. Like Fedor, like it's very possible Fedor was the pound for pound number 1 guy at the time.
Yeah, very.
If not, he was in the top 3.
Yeah, it would have been like him, Anderson, and BJ or something. Or GSP, some shuffling of those 4 names at the top. All right, gentlemen. So let's keep things pushing here. We do have a UFC main event to talk about. Marvin Vettori gets a unanimous decision win over Paulo Costa, and the fight itself, a very entertaining fight. I mean, we weren't surprised that the fight came out to be entertaining. These are 2 sort of meathead type of guys, and when 2 meatheads come together, things happen that can be interpreted as violent and entertaining. But the real drama from this fight came not from the action between the bells. It came from the action on the scale.
Between their heads.
Yeah. We saw the ever evolving weight class shifts of this fight throughout fight week, starting with, I believe it was the media day Wednesday. Costa is on the podium and says, hey, I'm not going to make 185, and we should probably do this at 195. Those terms were agreed to, surprisingly. And then after that, he couldn't do that, and they renegotiated for a light heavyweight fight. Turns out, pretty good fight. With this being said, do you think we have found a new home for both Paulo Costa and Marvin Vettori at 205 pounds?
This is something I've been kind of thinking of the day or 2 before the fight, and then certainly since then. If this had just been scheduled in the first place as a light heavyweight bout, like we'd known 3 months out that that's what it was going to be, I think I would have been all for it, because these are 2 guys that, even though they are both top 5 middleweights, they have such a long road to get back at a title shot as long as Israel Adesanya is there, that it would probably take a meteor strike wiping out most of the middleweights on earth.
Or hitting Adesanya.
Yeah, or just hitting Adesanya. Because as long as Adesanya is sitting there, nobody wants to see Vettori 3, and definitely nobody wants to see Costa 2. So these guys had the opportunity to just make a light heavyweight fight. Whoever won would just be instantly a fresh new face in another division that needs fresh contenders. The constantly aging light heavyweight division. But instead, we just got kind of a flaming train wreck that left us with unanswered questions. It's a shame. It's a shame. Like, if they had done on purpose what they did by accident or by grift, this was complete bullshit on Costa's part, it would have been a better outcome for all involved, even Costa in a losing effort. Like, if Costa had lost that fight that way in a planned light heavyweight fight, his stock would have taken no hit whatsoever. It was one of the best performances of his career, even though he lost. And it showed that he had like 5-round cardio at 205.
That was the most important thing, I think, that we learned about Paulo Costa that I didn't think he had. Period.
He won the 5th round against one of the division's ultimate grinders.
He won the 5th round against a guy that, oh my God. You and Keith Schilling talked about this on the recap show. Who in their right mind would have said, yeah, I think that they're going to go to the 5th round and Costa's going to look better than Vettori?
Yeah, like Costa's going to win the 5th round against the guy who kills people with pace and cardio.
Unreal.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you, Duffy, that this if they had intentionally booked this at light heavyweight, then they could have properly gone through the whatever they needed to go through the steps to get the muscle down, or to hydrate differently, or to prepare, and not just, hey, it's Wednesday, you're already under the weight limit that we want you to have. You know, I don't know if Vettori said it outright, but I'm pretty sure he hinted at, when they were talking, when he and Costa were talking to Brett Okamoto, that he was already there at the 195 limit that they were talking about. And so this is a guy who had to unweight cut to make 205 pounds, which turned, or I think it was 204. Well, anyway, according to Dana at the presser, that Vettori went up to 208 after the fight. So, you know, he had dinner after the weigh-ins and was good. And Costa was about 220. And that makes you go, oh my God, of course Costa should be a light heavyweight. How on earth is he not? I mean, Chris Weidman did it for a while. Then we went, okay, Chris Weidman, maybe you should stop. And, well, you know, other things happened along the way. He tried and met Dominic Reyes. Man, Costa looked way better than I expected. But he looked terrible because it's, you know, what do they say? 90% of the fight game is 50% mental or something. I forget the exact expression. But it's that he looked great in the cage, performing, everything like that. It was everything around it that was nonsense. And if that were cut out and he just had his performance, it would have been, people would have been talking about ranking him at light heavyweight. Like, if you guys remember, Jose Aldo fought Marlon Moraes at bantamweight and looked good. And he lost a decision, but he looked good. So people and the UFC, I think the rankers, ranked Jose Aldo off his loss to the new weight class. So, Costa could have had the biggest stock up, even though he lost. But as a result, he kind of threw it all away. And I believe they both should fight at 205, because why on earth not? I'd have no interest in seeing them fight the top of the guys of the division. The best case scenario for Marvin Vettori is that he hopes that Robert Whittaker loses, because that way he can fight another guy who's lost to Israel Adesanya multiple times to try and work his way up to a, well, it's not a rubber match because he lost both times, but a trilogy match like a BJ Penn, Frankie Edgar, that no one wants to see. So, I mean, 205 or bust, guys.
I guess so. I'm of several different trains of thought with this, because one thing for
Mr. Falcon.
I mean, one thing for sure is, like, we don't like the practice of weight cutting. We do not like it. And we've spoken against the culture of heavy weight cuts many, many times. I appreciate the fact that Costa at some point said, hey, I'm not taking myself through this process that's going to strip me of potentially everything good that I can provide in that cage, just to make this arbitrary number for 5 minutes before I have a cup of Pedialyte and balloon back to 220. Like that, you know, I appreciate that was done, that they just said, okay, we're not going to cut this weight. And we've seen fighters try, like we saw Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier try to do this when they were scheduled to meet at UFC 230, and Dana didn't budge. We did see Nick Diaz sort of force the hand of Robbie Lawler very recently, but the idea that Paulo Costa actually like fooled the UFC, like one of, you know, forgive me for saying, one of the biggest fools on the roster fooled the UFC. I'm marveled by that. And I'm also marveled by the idea that Vettori and his management just fell right into it. Man, it's time, Marvin Vettori, it's time to reevaluate who is negotiating things for you. If you went through all of this, you had to stop your weight cut, you had to readjust everything you were doing in order to make this 5-round fight on the terms that your opponent needed. There is no way that the commission 20 or 30% deduction is enough of a reward. Dude, sorry.
I mean, if Costa had just not said anything out of the ordinary during fight week and had just shown up on Friday morning and been 2 pounds overweight, Vettori would have gotten 20% of his purse and the fight would have gone on.
Exactly.
How did he only get the same 20% when Costa missed weight by 20 pounds? How did Ali Abdelaziz not have Costa and the UFC over a slow fire?
Because he doesn't have his fighters in his best interest. Look at Cory Anderson this past week and the whole MMA Hour debacle that didn't need to be a debacle. Yeah. It's Monday of the following week, and we are still talking about it for a legitimate reason. How do managers that get paid by the fighters, A, not have the best interest of the fighters in mind, 2, not try and get more money for their fighters, which would then in turn get them more money? I don't understand how it's possible from a reasonable standpoint, from a logical standpoint, from any standpoint other than there must be something else going on. And I don't want to put my tinfoil hat on because that's not my bag. But what manager would decide not to get more money for themselves unless there's some other nefarious, questionable cause? I don't know. I'm not speculating anything, but I don't understand.
I'll go ahead and speculate because I'm just going to keep an eye out for any dominance fighters getting opportunities that don't seem deserved in the near future, because this almost felt like him doing a solid for the UFC and, hey, we'll look out for one of your clients in the future. That's what it felt like to me. I could be completely wrong with that, and if I am wrong, I will jump on these airwaves and apologize profusely, but that's the way it looks like from my vantage point, way off in the distance in Los Angeles. So
it's a huge conflict of interest. He has 60 fighters on UFC roster.
Yes.
Because of that, he has his stake is bigger in keeping a good working relationship with the UFC than with any individual one of his fighters.
Right.
Like an extra, 10% of 10% on driving a harder bargain for Vettori is simply not worth antagonizing the UFC.
Right.
Can you imagine? Oh, sorry.
No. I mean, I was just going to raise the question. That's not a tenable relationship. That's not. I mean, that's one of the borders on illegality, because if you're not representing your client to the best of your ability, your fiduciary duty, you're doing so for your own interests and not those of your clients. That's when it crosses the line. And I mean that line, the L word line. And I mean, nothing's ever going to come of it, but it's just, it's a massive problem. I mean, Duffy, you're right. When he represents a 10% of the roster, that's an unreasonable amount of power that this management organization has, and you can see it selectively enforced and benefiting certain fighters and not others, and that's just wrong from any reasonable perspective.
I can think of, off the top of my head, I can think of at least 3 times that his clients have gotten a title shot that belonged to someone else, that they were allowed to skip the queue for and someone who was more deserving of that shot was left behind in the dust. I'm thinking of, while it was successful, Kamaru Usman at UFC 235, Colby Covington should have gotten that fight. And we've definitely talked about how those negotiations broke through because of stupidity. I can think of Cody Garbrandt having the immediate rematch against TJ Dillashaw. I can think of who was Frankie Edgar against Max Holloway, coming off of a knockout loss. So
Frankie Edgar against everybody.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But so it's very difficult for me not to think of these things when something like this happens. So I just want to ask a question of you gentlemen in regards to this. Can you imagine this happening in boxing? Can you imagine a world-class boxer who is scheduled to fight in a main event in that same week, and this debacle on the scale, and this person stepping in the ring for pennies on the dollar compared to what they should be getting under these circumstances, if they were even stepping into the ring in the first place?
They'd be laughed out of the building. They'd be laughed off the negotiating table.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't fly at all, like at all. If their opponent came in a pound and a half over, they are raising a shitstorm in favor of their client, and it is very likely that their client would not even step foot into that ring.
No question. There's no doubt in my mind at all. But it makes me think of, when I think of the table and allowing this and everything like that, I also have to place a bit of blame on the feet of the Nevada State Athletic Commission for allowing this to transpire unimpeded. Like, there was, I mean, all we knew is that NSAC cleared it to go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it's Wednesday night. We're going to allow this fight to change 10 pounds. It's Thursday night. We're going to let this fight change another 10 pounds. That's not a reasonable licensing decision to make on the fly with no deliberation or anything like that. I mean, not that people want to listen to NSAC meetings, but it sounds like just somebody going, yeah, whatever, UFC, go ahead. Or the lobby of the UFC is so powerful, you don't want to anger them by saying, no, your main event that's about to happen can't happen, because it's ludicrous. Because that's crazy.
UFC be like, don't make us move this to Florida.
Exactly. And then they would move their headquarters to Jacksonville, and then we'd all laugh.
Yeah, the new Apex Center will be set up in the lobby of the ViStar Arena. You know what, Jay? I think you're right in a lot of ways, but I do want to push back on that a little bit. Please. Because I do think in a case like this, the Athletic Commission allowing it to happen makes some form of sense, because they weren't negotiating it to be any less safe.
Okay.
To eliminate the weight
they were going down in weight,
right? If it was like if Costa showed up and was like, hey, I'm ready to make welterweight, and they said, yeah, let's do it, and then he came back and said, you know what, like, screw it, 155, let's rock, and they allowed this to happen within the same week, then yeah, we've got a serious problem. But I think in this case, where it's like you're gonna gain more weight and you've taken a lot of the danger out of the whole equation, then all right, we'll let it rock. It's stupid, but okay, do your thing.
I'll counter argue that commissions do have a say on the weight classes that fighters compete at. Now, granted, commissions, they can say no, you can't, and then the fighter will go elsewhere. Like, for instance, Aspen Ladd, notorious weight issue. California has refused to license her at bantamweight, so she fights in other states. So I can understand how NSAC would be resisting to go, hey, let's pump the brakes on this situation. But it isn't just the poundage; it's the suddenness that makes it problematic. Because, like, these fighters have to get licensed at a certain weight they're going to compete at. It's part of the contract, part of the negotiating process to get cleared at this weight. It's very possible that one of the reasons that James Krause didn't step in or in a recent week to go fight at middleweight is because he's registered as a welterweight. And there's just too many hoops to go through to up that process, for safety. Because, again, yes, you're not cutting as much weight, but at 205 pounds, you do hit harder. You are larger. You do this and that. So, there's questions on all end. I don't have any good answers, but I have a lot of questions.
Definitely good questions there that should be asked. And wow, we actually had something to talk about there out of pretty nonsense main event that we got to witness, although it was fun. Definitely a fun fight. All right, gentlemen, so there was one other aspect to discuss about that fight, and same thing came up in the Francisco Trinaldo and Dwight Grant fight. Point deductions due to fouls. Are we okay with the point deductions of those two fights?
Yes. I'm fine with there being a point deduction on the first eye poke every time. It's not the same as a cup shot. Those can happen inadvertently while you're just in the course of striking with another human being. But an eye poke, even an inadvertent one, is avoidable. Like, I mean, you guys have both covered live events. I've covered live events. I've covered a lot of smaller live events where I've basically had freedom to go wherever I want. I've been in on a lot, and you've cornered people, Ant. So you, as well as I, have been in on a lot of the referee kind of huddles they have with the fighters before the event. That was your first warning, because I've never been to one of those where they were not like, not only are eye pokes disallowed, but watch your fingers. Your fingers must be closed or they must be up. That was your first warning. Like, eye pokes are so often they're so often fight altering in a way that, honestly, even cup shots sometimes aren't.
Yeah.
They're avoidable. They're impactful. I am fine with there being a point deduction on the first eye poke every time, because you know what? People will stop poking in the eye if that happens.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, Vettori said clearly in his post-fight interview, the next round was blurry. I couldn't see very well in the next round. Now, there was some issue with it, and in that Herzog had said when he was going to the doctor point, I had already warned you for eye pokes or anything like that, so I'm taking a point now. And the dispute was, did Herzog warn him through the fight? And Duffy, you're exactly right on the money that the fighters are always warned. Always. Every time. Every fight that happens, they're warned of these things. They are warned multiple times. They are warned in the fighters' group meeting beforehand, not just a one-on-one with a referee, because when they get up in the middle of the cage and go, you have any questions, Blue? Any questions, Red? They've already spoken to the referee individually that night. So there's too many warnings, too many non-covered, non-answered fouls that clearly impact and hamper and hurt a fighter that are just, that's just the cost of doing business. I am 100% with you. I like the eye poke point deduction that Jason Herzog took for Kayla Costa. I like the point deduction that was taken in the Trinaldo fight a little more, because it felt like the whole situation was handled well for him. The whole everything that went down, where he said, okay, here's the deal, here's the problem. You did this. This is your foul. This is the other foul. So I'm taking a point now. It wasn't, you get a free cup shot. You get a free eye poke. You get a free fence grab. And then the next one, you get a something. Fouls have to compound with one another. I don't want to see a John Jones fight, which happens frequently, where he will get away with one of each. And since he doesn't do it a second
filling out
time,
that bingo card.
He'll fill out that punch card, and he won't redeem it for a free sub. And that's exactly what referees need to do: redeem it for a free sub and or take a damn point.
Absolutely, it's very difficult to disagree with any of that. Fouls exist for a reason, and the ultimate warning, not the referee's discussion with the fighters before they go in, not whatever the ref says in the case. The ultimate warning is the rule book. It's in the damn unified rules. If you step foot into the cage, you know what rule set you are fighting under, unless you're Petr Yan. So you fight under the rule set, which means you don't poke in the eyes. You do your best to avoid that. Don't have outstretched fingers, etc., etc. There should be consequences for breaking those rules. And did you see Dwight Grant's face when the fight was over? His eye was swollen shut.
Oh my God.
And you think that might have had an impact on his performance? Take a wild guess.
Now, if I can remember, it was actually Jason Herzog who took a point in the Caceres Sungwoo Choi fight, which was the one I was trying to reference, that it was handled very well. Bring in the translator. Here's the thing. Here's the whole explanation. Chris Taioni did the Trinaldo situation, also taking a point. I think this is the most points taken that I can recall at a single event, because there were 3 different times that points were deducted for fouls. And damn it, give me more points lost.
Yeah, absolutely. More points lost means less fouls will take place in the future. I love it. All right, Bill. I don't know what I was about to say. I was totally buddies or something. Yeah, because I always call my son Buddy, and he's destroying something right now, and you can hear him screaming. But anyway, let's move on to shallow cuts. I'm gonna get the clock ready to go here. You guys are gonna have 30 seconds to answer a few questions. Wow, the way he is sitting on this couch is making me real nervous. All right, okay, he's down now. It's safe. All right, so I am going to assign the questions this week. Ben, I think I'll start with you. We haven't talked about KSW at all, so why not go into that world for just a moment here? How do you feel about aging heavyweights like Pudanovsky, Fedor, and Andrei Arlovsky picking up wins recently?
I love it in all 3 cases. Fedor got a no smoke, no mirrors, legit win over a top 15 heavyweight and looked like his vintage self. Andrei Arlovsky continues to adjust his strategy to his waning physical tools and stays relevant. And Pudanovsky, I've made this comparison before, but his fight career is like Shaq's rap career. It started as a freak show, and he quietly kept working on getting better at it, even after most of the spotlight was off. I love it. Yeah.
I'm all for a Shaq rap reference.
Pudge Fu, the return.
Hey, you still can't stop the ring. So
see,
man, I love And I will also note that Fedor Emelianenko was the #1 heavyweight in the world and the #3 pound for pound fighter in the world in 2009 when Daniel Cormier said he ain't nothing. I wish I could have heard what Ant said right there, but he muted himself.
He left him. No, he left himself muted on purpose.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. All right. So, Jay, I'm going to go ahead and toss a question your way. Mason Jones is now 1-1 and 1 no contest in the UFC. Do you agree with Bisping that he has championship potential? No, his mic isn't muted. He's pregnant with thought.
I'm pregnant, but it ain't with thought. What? Why? Why is it because of the UK connection? I get it. He got a win in the UFC. He looked good in Cage Warriors. I get it. He has potential. But to go and bestow him that after barely getting by David Onama?
It's a tad bit premature there, Bisping.
Onama's stock went up way more than Jones's.
That's exactly. Thank you for saying that. That is 100% right. We all were discussing the Sherdog staff members in our own Slack channel. Onama's the guy to watch out after that fight.
Yeah, it was like he came in on what was like a week notice.
Not even.
And looked pretty damn good in a losing effort. So, and up a weight class too. So
up a weight class in a losing effort, having never gone the distance.
Yeah, I'm more excited about him than Mason Jones after that bout. So, all right, I'll let one of you guys ask me. Ben, please ask me a question, sir, and I will start the clock.
On a 5-fight win streak now, does this version of Alex Caceres have what it takes to climb the UFC featherweight ladder?
Oh, man, I want to say yes so bad. Because I have been a Bruce Leeroy stan ever since he first stepped foot on that screen in The Ultimate Fighter. He is just always entertaining, always exciting to watch. But I'm going to have to say no. And I think as his skill improves and as he continues getting wins, he's certainly establishing a presence. The problem is he gets beat up way too much even in his wins, and that is going to run its course in a very tough featherweight division.
Sure enough.
Yeah, I mean, man, I love some Bruce Leeroy. But just I always get nervous about a guy who has to go through hell to get that win.
And here's the problem that Leeroy is going to have to face. The number 14 guy, just for random example, is Shane Burgos. That's just I think of them fighting, and I don't like anything about it.
I mean, they just made a matchup for a couple months down the road between Movsar Evloev and Ilia Topuria.
Oh my God, 13 and 15.
Although, like either of those guys, all respect, because I love Caceres as well, would put Caceres through a meat grinder. Because he still lets his opponent dictate what kind of fight it's going to be too often. Be careful. So, I mean, either of those, that's 30-27, Caceres on the ground, eating stuff he doesn't like.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Jay, go ahead.
It is the first 5-fight win streak of his entire career.
Yeah.
It's got to be the second longest one in the division.
Volkanovski has more, and maybe one or two. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, maybe Topuria or Evloev.
Yeah, But then you look at who's beaten and go, okay, Chase Hooper, Kevin Kroom, Austin Springer, Ocho Peterson.
Yeah. It's like you still can't let your opponent dictate the terms if you're going to if you're going to make a run in a division that competitive. Like if this were the same thing going on at heavyweight,
he would have been like fighting Nagano right now.
Yeah, then all right, then we're talking. But at featherweight, it's just no. The skill sets just doesn't match up well for him. The higher in the rankings you get. All right, gentlemen. So let's go ahead and ask that age-old question as we break out the seasoning salt, the paprika, the butter for the pan, and anything else you think will make your food taste better. I'm going to ask you, Ben, how's Taste My Crow this week?
Oh, man. Give me just a second here to remind myself of which of these I really got the worst. Because there were a couple where I just... Oof. You know what? Even though I got the results of the fight right, I was dead wrong about the main event of UFC Fight Night 196. I figured Vettori was going to run through Costa because I figured Costa showing up, like openly confessing to huge weight problems, was an indication that he had not been properly motivated in camp, was underprepared. He seemed like a guy that might have trouble getting his motivation back up after having reached the pinnacle, gotten his title shot, and gotten humiliated so badly. So I had Vettori by second round TKO on the ground, just Costa wilting and being done. And even halfway through the first round, when Costa was already breathing with his mouth open, I was like, "Oh yeah, I was right about this one." I turned out to be dead wrong. He did the breathing through the mouth thing of a Yoel Romero or Derek Lewis, where he looks tired and the pace slows a little bit, but he's still throwing effective offense all 5 rounds. Like I said, it's one of the most impressive performances of Paulo Costa's career, despite the fact that he came out on the wrong side of it. So yeah, I'm having all kinds of crow on that one, like a very fat crow, like a turkey-sized crow that like can't even fly. But I'll take it because the fight ended up being better than I expected.
Not a bad one there. Jay, how stays my crow this week?
This week we're keeping our international cuisine alive, and instead of going down south, we're going to go far east to Russia because I'm taking a giant ladle full of some Russian borscht soup, something like that, because Fedor Emelianenko did the thing that I did not think was going to happen at all in any way. Now, I get it. It was very possible this fight was ending by first round knockout no matter what. It didn't matter. Somebody was going to land something big, and then they were going to fall down. That was the inevitability of this fight. And although I did kind of see it playing out like a Mitrione situation, they both clunk into each other at the same time and fall down. I had Tim Johnson just younger, a little bit faster, a little bit more durable. It all spelled out for the kind of situation where it's going to make Russian fans really sad at the end of the night. And the one who laid an egg was Vitaly Minakov and not, in fact, Fedor Emelianenko. So I am eating crow that I had Tim Johnson my first round knockout, and I couldn't be happier to drink in this cold beet soup.
You know what? That's a very good one. And I'll just cheat a little bit and I'll have a little bit of both of your plates because I had some surprising surprising things happen before my eyes for both the Bellator and the UFC main events. As far as the UFC was concerned, I thought Costa was going to win, but I thought it was going to be more so because Vettori just didn't do the smart things, that he would not be strong enough to kind of get Costa down with any level of consistency, and he would kind of fall into sort of that knucklehead style of fight that Costa seems to like. He had all the opportunities in the world to fall into that sort of fight, that just wild, sloppy brawl and just trading shots, but he didn't. And while he sunk into that a moment or two here and there, he still maintained a very disciplined approach and was able to get the decision win. So I was very impressed by what Vettori offered from a strategic standpoint in that fight. And of course, I did not think Fedor was going to get the victory against Tim Johnson. I just thought he'd be too faded. And to have him come out with fast hands like he did, we haven't seen that in so long. Just didn't think it was going to show up in 2021. But here we are. And I'll take both of those helpings of crow with a smile and a beer. So appreciate that, gentlemen. Now let's move on to the greatest titled segment in all of media history. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the course of the past week. Jay, I believe I will turn the floor over to you. What is your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
So, did you guys know that the UFC has a big show this weekend? Big pay-per-view. People are excited about it. You probably did, right? You knew, okay, titles, cool, awesome, and it's free, all that, blah, blah, blah. Did you know there's another major fight event happening this week? Because most people didn't. Most people forgot or had no idea that PFL is ending its tournament Wednesday, just October 27th. Not their year-end extravaganza they've been having. They, for whatever reason, decided, and we media have known this for some time, so it's not a shock to us, but it's still, that's here now. And I mean that with all respect to PFL team, Greg Savage, shout out. But this does not have the feel, the makings, the anything of anybody caring about this event to any significant degree. This is a season in PFL that we have lauded for having all sorts of issues and matchmaking discrepancies and execution, everything just not coming together and kind of just dragging along. And this just has the makings of it just being a dud. And that's really a shame, because unlike, I will dump on fight promoters until I'm blue in the face or blue in the shirt, because most of the time it's deserved. But I still want fight companies to succeed. I want fights to happen. I want fighters to get paid, except for some fight. No, I want all fighters to get paid very well. And this is an avenue for some of them to get paid very well, and some of them to get paid disproportionately too well, considering their level of opposition and everything else. But I digress. PFL Championships is here this weekend, and I am completely not surprised, Mr. Falcons, that no one cares. And that's really sad to me.
How much do you think it has to do with the fact that it's just kind of running Halloween week instead of on New Year's Eve, like they did their first two?
I think that matters to an extent, because it was you count on the year-end card, because you have Rizin. Rizin does the December 31st thing now. It helped taking the helm from Dream and from Pride. They all have those Japan cards, but PFL kind of had tried to create its own little tradition, and to just drop it, I can't figure out, other than it's the last Wednesday in October, why this day was selected for a year-end championship event, because I think there are 2 more months left in the year. It doesn't compute. It just screams of the same odd decisions that have been made all season, including every friggin' person saying the word smart cage every other damn word. PFL, just pick one lane and stick to it and let people know about it. And I think this change in date, if you thought the ratings were bad before, imagine telling fight fans on a random Wednesday on Halloween week to sit through 6 title fights and 4 other random fights that you don't care about. Good luck with that.
Let me just throw some speculation out there. I mean, maybe this was strictly a financial decision as far
Let's
as
get
when
it over
you can
with.
book venues. Yeah. I'm thinking of, like, knew this from, like, planning my wedding and whatnot, that, like, you can book a venue cheaper around certain holidays that typically don't bring out people. Like,
was there a lot of competition for the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino on New Year's Eve?
I don't know. I mean, it's a possibility.
Gonna have some ice capades going on that they couldn't, like, go ahead.
Hey, it's funny. I was gonna say Disney on Ice. You beat me to it.
Hey man, because I imagine, like, booking the Hulu theater attached to MSG for New Year's might be a little more costly when you think of the logistics, when you have massive New Year's Eve celebrations surrounding you. Might be a little more costly than having a Wednesday before a holiday that isn't like an official calendar holiday. So I would go ahead and say it's that, but I could be wrong. PFL has made some very puzzling decisions as of late, and this could just be another one.
There are 2 Jim Gaffigan shows on December 27th and 28th. And then the next event booked currently at the Seminole Hard Rock Hollywood in Florida is a Tim Allen show in January.
Oh, so you can't compete with Tim Allen.
There is you have a week to buffer that.
Hey, Tim Allen might be moving the coke that Chachi's trying to move in one, but that's a whole nother story there. It might be Tim Allen might be the front man for one's drug laundering operations. So let's move on before Buzz Lightyear gets mad. Now, how about I share my I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. And that comes courtesy of UFC lightweight / welterweight Kevin Lee, who is temporarily sitting down due to a USADA violation for ADHD medication. I believe it was Adderall.
It was Adderall.
Yeah, it's Adderall. Okay. So interesting on several different fronts. I mean, I don't want to go up here and talk about how fighters need a union so they can negotiate the things that are flagged as violations and certain thresholds for drugs, because as we know, mental health is a very serious thing. ADHD is something that affects a lot of people and can have a lot of negative impacts on your life. And I imagine for the level of concentration and focus needed to compete at the highest levels of mixed martial arts, it's absolutely no different. You add the public pressure, you add the celebrity on top of that. Probably not the easiest thing to do from a mental health standpoint. So I'm not going to sit here and doubt that this was something that Kevin needs to just kind of function on a daily basis. But I can say, hey, this is not something that should be negatively impacting his career from a USADA standpoint, as long as he's not in the cage, jacked off Adderall or whatever the case may be. So, hey, fighters, let this be a lesson to you. There is health beyond your fight health, and maybe you should come to a negotiating table with one another and figure these things out, what's in your best interest as a collective. So just a little reminder, let's throw that out there. Kevin Lee will not be eligible to compete again for, I think, 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, so for him, for his schedule, that's not the worst thing in the world. He's not the most active guy. So yeah, he typically competes like once a year, maybe twice a year if we're lucky. So yeah, I just wish Kevin Lee the best, and please apply for that therapeutic use exemption next time, which he neglected to do this time. All right, fellas. So
I'm curious what Ben has to say, what he's surprised about.
Just yes. Back on the PFL front for a brief moment, and in case of like the phenomenon of the lady doth protest too much, UFC president Dana White, of course, did have some things to say about PFL's most dominant fighter and signature star, Kayla Harrison, and it was the very customary Dana White shade for a high-profile fighter fighting outside the UFC. It was it was like, well, if I was Kayla Harrison, I keep doing exactly what I'm doing, just beating up on those low-level women for big paychecks. I wouldn't want to come over to the UFC and fight Amanda Nunes. And it's almost like if this were a fictional TV show, we would go into this echo like, fight Amanda Nunes, fight Amanda Nunes, fight. We're we're talking about people that come out of the same camp, both ATT fighters, know each other at least on a friendly level, but I think would be perfectly willing to fight each other. We've spoken before about how ATT is so huge at this point that it's almost 3 or 4 separate teams in one giant complex. And you can tell which team you're on by whether you walk out with Conan or Mike Brown or Pompina or whoever's cornering you. You may not even work directly very much with the other coaches. But it's the exact kind of thing that Dana White will often say about someone who is about to come up as a free agent soon. You may recall, like the likes of Eddie Alvarez is a pretty good, fairly recent example. But I was not surprised to see that. And I fully expect we'll see Kayla Harrison in the octagon within the next 12 to 18 months.
Did he say the exact same thing when Cyborg was in Invicta?
Yes, he did.
I think almost like probably verbatim about beating out overmatched women for low pay. I swear. I remember that.
Which apparently he was fine with that as long as it happened in the UFC, because he brought her over and then started bringing over women from Invicta for her to beat up.
I mean, and I think as a blanket rule, you can take any horrible thing that Dana White has said and say he probably said that about Chris Cyborg. So just blanket rule. Yeah, it was said about Cyborg. All right, fellas. So we've got one other order of business to discuss before we go into UFC 267, which will be free for us in the United States this weekend. The U.S. international vaccine mandate. The United States government has made it a requirement for all international travelers to be vaccinated. This is going to have an effect on the UFC, as of course we have a lot of foreign fighters on the roster who do fill in a lot of these fight night cards and obviously the pay-per-views as well. How is this going to affect the action in the octagon?
I think 4 of the last 6 fight night cards this applies to this year have at least one foreign unvaccinated fighter in the main event. I believe that's what I came up with, Aldo and Rodriguez and a couple other fighters that are, depending on where their camps are and if they're already in the U.S. versus training abroad, it'll be encountering this. It is the most UFC that the UFC can possibly be when Dana Instead, Dana says, we're going to probably go back to Fight Island because of this. Look at other sports leagues. NBA's like, if you're not vaccinated, you're not playing, Kyrie Irving. It's just, how funny is it that it is now October 2021 and the UFC is actively looking to skirt regulations? One of the company famous for saying we are moving towards regulation, and then to now go and say, well, we're probably going to start moving our fight cards overseas so that these fighters don't have to get vaccinated. At what point should the UFC stop being part of the problem? How about like at the beginning? If the UFC required its fighters to be vaccinated and its camps and whatever that happened, it would probably be a great boost to a lot of those involved, especially to those in countries that may not have access to the vaccine. See also many fighters in Brazil, which some of them are vaccinated because they don't want it. Paulo Costa seems to think he's Superman because he got it twice and therefore it doesn't matter to him. But a lot of these fighters aren't doing it because they're going, haha, I'm tough. They're going, well, what am I supposed to do? The president is actively saying it's fake. There's not vaccines to be had. So the UFC could help. The UFC could provide a service because there are more vaccines here. I believe that that an exemption, and I need to do a little more digging, from what I had read from the initial regulation, is that the exemption is such that if a foreign traveler comes to U.S., gets vaccinated, waits a little while, you're good to go. So the UFC could put one small room in the massive headquarters it has built to be the vaccination station. Make it cool and catchy and make it a theme song. Put instead of face the pain, face the needles. I don't care. Just get that done and you could solve a lot of problems very quickly. But instead, you will throw money at another venue that won't let you go there free anymore. By the way, remember, Abu Dhabi said, we'll foot the bill for a little while, but you're going to have to start paying your way, which is why the UFC left for all but this next upcoming pay-per-view. So the UFC will actually spend more money and energy and set up a whole new logistical set so they can avoid getting their fighters vaccinated and their teams vaccinated. It blows my mind.
From a pure, just a pragmatic standpoint,
a human perspective.
Dumbest thing ever. Like, never. Like, we can go on and on about the human cost, about the morality, about setting a good example, about protecting people, and all. We can go on and on about that. But quite frankly, none of that matters to the people who don't care about any of it. But let's talk about just pure logistics. The amount of fights that drop out due to COVID, the amount of fighters we hear about that catch COVID and can't compete for a little while or have long haul symptoms like Khamzat Chimaev, who's returning finally after a year out of action. Cody Garbrandt being another case of a long hauler who missed out on a title shot because of it. If the fighters were mandated to be vaccinated, which, by the way, the UFC has a lot of say on what the fighters do with their bodies by forcing them into weight classes, by having USADA piss test them wherever they go and blood test them whenever they feel like it. If the fighters were mandated and their teams were mandated to be vaccinated, there will be less scrambling of the matchmakers to pull together cards at the last minute when you already have a stretched roster. There would be less likelihood that a fighter would get sick and be off of the calendar for an extended period of time. Therefore, one less body that you have to find out in the regional circuit. We have, I just a quick count, I think 10 Russian fighters fighting at UFC 267 this weekend. Russia has just gone into a mass lockdown because of just wild, out of control COVID. By the way, the same place that Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov picked up COVID and passed away. So we have an influx of fighters from a current hotbed of COVID, hot enough to where the country locks down, a country that is notoriously tight-lipped about problems that it has within its borders, is publicly shut down businesses and shut down travel and everything else. We're going to invite those fighters over to mingle in with everyone else. No vaccines, nothing. It's all good. This is stupid. Never mind the morality behind it. Never mind just, I'm sick of being, of living in some level of quarantine. and trying to protect my family all the time and all. I'm tired of it. Beyond that, beyond my frustrations as just a human being who wants to like return to some level of normalcy, this is stupid from a business standpoint. This is stupid from the standpoint of running an organization like a well-oiled machine, which the UFC has to function like a well-oiled machine to keep this ridiculous pace at. So please, someone explain the logic to me here.
I'll step on Duffy's toes for just a second. The first UFC card that when the vaccine mandate goes into effect will be Holloway versus Rodriguez. There are 10 of the 26 fighters in the card that are internationally based. Now, I'm not talking about whether they have their camps in the States, but just simply are internationally based fighters and therefore probably have international camps along the way. There are 19 in the next card. 19 of 30 of the fighters at UFC Vieira Tate, which is in the Apex in Las Vegas. 19 of those 30 are not from America. What are they going to do? We know just from discussions and word of mouth and conversation, roughly 30% of fighters, according to different commissions, are saying are vaccinated. So if you cut down that percentage, 30% of 19, you still have a whole lot of fights that are gone.
Yes. Just doesn't sound like a smart way to run an organization.
Come on, Duffy, spew, let it out. Let it out.
No, like this face is just my only takeaway is that we have another 15 fight card coming.
Oh God, yeah, I know it's not bad.
Send that card to Plague Island, please.
Jesus. It might not last. If there is an upside in that pacing kind of thing, is that there are 19 of 30 fighters in that card not living in America or based in America.
So we'll have 3 or 4 fights.
We'll have off.
As long as they have enough fights to satisfy the ESPN contractual obligation, I guess that's probably all that matters in the end. All right, fellas. So let's before we head out the door. Oh wow, that's a big ass fire truck that just drove past. Like the joys.
Sound the alarm, yo.
Yeah, I mean, hey, this is a free numbered card, so let's get it. UFC 267. Who you got, Ben? Islam Makhachev versus Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker coming off of a quick turnaround. Who you got?
It looks as though Makhachev is a 6-1 favorite as of right now. While I favor him, I think that is a little out of proportion. Again, despite the pedigree and the haircut, he is not Khabib Nurmagomedov, but Dan Hooker as a tall, leggy guy who throws a lot of kicks, like his game is going to be stifled badly. It's a bad stylistic matchup for him. I do have Makhachev by a pretty lopsided decision, probably.
I am very much with you on the whole. He shouldn't be this high of a favorite, Makhachev. I am concerned that Hooker, I'm going to echo some points. Long-rangey striker doesn't take well to suffocating grappler. But the only guy to take him down the last 3 years was Dustin Poirier, and I believe that was a trip after they were beating the brakes off each other. So this is a guy who has stayed on his feet against tough guys that have tried to take him down, like a Gilbert Burns type. Obviously, we know the Michael Chandler situation. We know Michael Chandler can grapple. Nasrat Haqparast isn't, allergic to it. It's a tough out for Hooker. But of the fighters that Makhachev has faced lately, Hooker's the guy that could land that shot and shake him up. Do what Adriano Martins did. I believe that was who did it beforehand. Yeah, Adriano Martins, who caught him in the first round. He was trying to set up and get motivated. I'm kind of going reluctant decision for Makhachev, but I'm starting to wonder if the level of competition that Makhachev has faced is not reflective of his resume as he's gone up. Like, he's fought a couple of legitimate talents, but not enough of them that make me wonder, is he ready to go against top 10 guys? So, yeah, it's a toughie for me. It's not 6-1 at all in my eyes.
And you guys are bringing up some good points. Definitely the betting odds seem ludicrous in my opinion. 6-1 is very disrespectful to Dan Hooker. But I think this fight, no matter who wins, is going to be one-way traffic. I think we're going to know very quickly, very, very quickly, when that first round starts, if Makhachev can't get the takedown, he is in for a world-class beating at the hands of Dan Hooker. So the thing is, when you are the tall, rangy striker who throws a lot of kicks, if you can stay on your feet, you are a problem for someone who doesn't have the best technique on in the striking and has to rely on the grappling, because we know exactly what Makhachev is going to have to do. We know exactly, and also too, to face a guy like Makhachev, that sort of skill set or that sort of mentality coming into the fight, Dan Hooker is in the best position to do it. He is off of a quick turnaround, so you know he's in top shape. And this hasn't been enough time to really process all the technicalities of fighting a guy like this. So that means his only option is to go out there and just do what he does. When you're fighting a guy like Makhachev, who is going to do one thing and one thing in particular, it's best to go out there and just do what you do and let the chips fall where they fall. I think Dan Hooker is in the best position right here to upset a lot of people at the sports book. So I'm reluctantly going to pick him to win a decision. I think the level of competition is a big step up for Makhachev, and I'm not quite sure he is going to be able to answer the call against someone like Hooker this early in his career. Like, Khabib saving grace a lot of times was that he was such a great athlete, that he was just so ungodly strong and so deceptively quick, and so his grip strength was so fantastic. And while Makhachev has a lot of those things, he doesn't have them on the level of Khabib. I think if you put Khabib with a lower athletic ability against some of the people that he fought on his come up, probably not going to be undefeated. And I think we're going to see that when Makhachev doesn't get his hand raised against Dan Hooker. So I'm going out there on the limb for my upset. All right, fellas. Petr Yan versus Cory Sandhagen for the interim bantamweight title. Jay, I'll begin with you. Who you got?
I have been watching Petr Yan for a while now, before he came to the UFC, when he had his wild battles in ACB, as it was at the time, before Absolute Championship Akhmat, when it was Absolute Champion Berkut and WFCA, before that merger, when he fought Tiger Magomedov, who's now in Bellator. And I have struggled, and I hope you guys can fix me on this one. What is Petr Yan really good at? What is his specialty? He has a lot of power. He's very quick. But I don't know if I would you first call Petr Yan a striker? Because you think of the game he implements, look what he did to Aljo Sterling. Aljo Sterling was beating him to the bell, especially in the early going, but Petr Yan grounded him, 6, 7 times in their fight? And you looked at his skills. Is he just that new breed that we've always talked about? For years we've talked about that new breed of MMA that isn't just a Demian Maia type, or just a Shane Carwin smash your face off kind of type, where he is just that good at everything. Like, he's high volume, he's in your face, he has cardio for days, he has all the check marks, but I can't point to really what he is. And that's bothered me for a long time, because he's fighting Cory Sandhagen, who Cory Sandhagen is an in-your-face striker with higher volume. His takedown defense is obviously the weakness, but his scramble game is exceptional. He's quick, maybe even quicker than Yan. I look at these and I can't really measure them up by striker versus grappler. And I like to do that just to kind of put archetypes up there, just to start with, just to kind of have a framework then to build off and go from there. Where I can comfortably say Cory Sandhagen's a striker. That's a pretty easy one to know. And his grappling could be a problem. He can get taken down depending on who's against you. I'd argue that the time he spent in his back when he fought TJ Dillashaw may have lost him the fight, even though I actually gave the fight for Cory Sandhagen. At this point right now, at Monday evening, I'm leaning towards Cory Sandhagen of the two. Not just because he's longer, he seems to hit harder, at least in that degree, which is weird to say because Petr Yan has been dropping everybody he's been fighting. He dropped Aldo, he dropped Aljo Sterling, he dropped Uriah Faber how many times? But don't know. I'm feeling Cory Sandhagen keeping him at the end of his strikes and not getting put on his back for long. So I think I'm going with an upset for Cory Sandhagen. That I may review this pick as later goes on, but I think Sandhagen's smart enough to not fall into Jan's bread and butter. I can take you down whenever I want game. Please, though, if I'm way off on the Jan specialization thing, please hit me with it.
No, I'm with you. I'm glad I'm not the only one that's seeing the upset here. Or, I mean, I say upset. I question why Sandhagen is plus 210 now anyway, because like you, I scored the Dillashaw fight for him. Like, I think Cory Sandhagen beat TJ Dillashaw, and that's the win that has basically catapulted Dillashaw right back into the title picture where he left off. I love it as a striking matchup between Jan, his speed, and not just his power, but the threat of his power. Like, people are always conscious of his power, and it changes their game plan. But despite the fact that he's often the shorter guy and he fights very compact, he's deceptively adept at getting his licks in on longer people. He's able to enter and land punches from farther than it looks like he should be able to. And of course, you know, if you are, who'd he do it to? Teruto Ishihara, he can lance you with a head kick from halfway across the cage against someone in Sandhagen who, yeah, he's super long, but deceptively good at landing hard strikes on the inside as well. Like, he's not one of the long-legged kickboxers that if you can get inside on him, like, all of his weapons are gone. I love it as a striking matchup. I am concerned about if Jan just decides to embrace his inner wrestler, whether most of this fight is going to take place with Sandhagen on the ground, trying to create scrambles from the bottom. And that's probably Jan's most obvious route to victory, but I'm counting on it being hard sledding for him. And I'm actually leaning Sandhagen as well on this one.
Oh man. I've gone back and forth on this one a lot, but I'm going to be the voice of dissension here. I'm going to go.
You already picked a 6-1 underdog. Like,
yeah, I did.
Nothing to prove.
That's true. Yeah, I've already made my mark for the show, but I'm going to go pure to Jan here, and I think it's more so going to be a function of some of the things that Sandhagen does. It's not necessarily that he's a long and rangy guy, and they could be susceptible to takedowns. It's not really that. It's the fact that he doesn't always have the best shot selection. Is a guy who spends a great deal of energy, and I think this is one of the things that lost him the Dillashaw fight, is throwing those spin kicks, going for those flying knees. And while you can land them and you can have a highlight reel moment like you did against Frankie Edgar, you can also miss it and find yourself wrapped up and thrown to the ground. You can find yourself low on energy. And someone like Petr Yan, who has shown an ability to pick away and chip away at your gas tank over time, he can take advantage of that. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think Sandhagen is going to go out there, land some good stuff, but not all of those crazy shots are going to land. And those are going to be missed opportunities to do things that are a little more fundamental. It's going to be opportunities created for Jan to initiate scrambles, get the fight to the ground, or initiate a clinch, wear him down. And I think it's going to be the undoing of Sandhagen from a gas tank perspective. And Petr Yan is not somebody you want to face when you're tired. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see, and he should win a decision here. All right, fellas, the last pick here, the light heavyweight title between Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira. Ben, who you got?
Oh, man. As much as I would love the Cinderella story ending here, Glover Teixeira just pulling off an all-time kind of MMA career arc from a guy, who in some ways had been written off as a top contender by the time he was 30. Like, I thought he would never even make it to the UFC during any part of his prime. And I thought he was probably past his prime when he finally did make it to the UFC, and he was like 33 or 34 or something. And he has just defied all expectations to make it to where he has. And this is where the Cinderella story ends. Blachowicz is a terrible matchup for Teixeira. I mean, Teixeira's on I think he's a 5-fight winning streak. The first 3 were him putting down the flaky, the easily tired, and the unreliable, like your Nikita Krylovs and Yohan Kudalavas of the world. But in his last 2 fights against Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos, he outlasted and survived. Both those guys had him in all kinds of trouble early on. Smith won the first round. Santos almost knocked him out in the first 2 minutes of their fight. He survived and took over. That's just not, I don't think that's going to be a plausible route to victory against Jan Blachowicz. Blachowicz, too big, too strong, too well conditioned, too well rounded. I see this one probably making it to the final bell, but just Blachowicz winning at least 4 out of the 5 rounds.
I want to believe. I want to tell you, I'm going to peel back behind the curtain for both of you guys and the viewing audience here. I wanted to present a night of upsets, and then that I would have actually called for every main card fighter to get an upset, of Hooker to get the upset, Sandhagen, Glover Teixeira. I am still, by the way, 100% picking Li Jingliang to knock Khamzat Chimaev out. That is not a bit. That is absolutely going to happen. And Marcin Tybura grinding out and beating Volkov. So I wanted that plus money across the board, and I maybe even would have suggested some wackadoo parlay that would have been like 100,000 to 1 of picking all 5 underdogs on the main card. I can't for Glover. Glover Teixeira lately has done that thing that what are they? I don't watch that show. What didn't Homer Simpson, wasn't he famous for, taking all the punishment and then doing the thing? That will work until it doesn't anymore at all, and then it's bad. And that thin line between success and horrible crushing defeat is the kind of thing that I think he's going to run into Jan Blachowicz. This is Blachowicz, who we thought was going to lose against Corey Anderson again. We thought was going to lose against Dominic Reyes again. We thought was going to get just lamped by Israel Adesanya, and he went, "Nah, I'm too big for this game." That is going to be a problem for Teixeira, in that Santos has struggled since the John Jones fight in the ability to, once my game stops working, I'm done. That seems to be what happened. If I can't get that big throw my bungalows, the Bobby Southworth, Logan Kincaid tough one knockout of, I'm just going to close my eyes and go like this so you fall down. That's not this. And Anthony Smith, who, we love Anthony Smith, but at the same time, Anthony Smith has had durability issues in his career. I mean, you don't get 18 losses by accident. Jan Blachowicz now, this version of Jan Blachowicz that has only fallen in his last 10 fights to Thiago Santos, when Santos was in murderer mode, when he had the hammer on his chest and he took it off and hit him with it, this is a different kind of situation. And I'm concerned for Teixeira, who might hope that he'll get tagged and then take Jan Blachowicz down and do things to and then survive the worst of it and get out. What's going to happen is he's going to get hit, he's going to get dropped, and then he's going to shoot for a desperation takedown. And Blachowicz is going to fall right over him, and he's going to smash him. I think 2 rounds. I think probably the second round is Blachowicz is going to get the knockout, and we're going to be like, oh, what could have been? And one last thing, we're going to hear the damn words Polish power so many times after this fight. And I don't
so
want
here
it.
for it.
I am
legendary
not here for
Polish power.
Polish power. Only if they talk about Mariusz Pudzianowski. There's your Polish power.
Man, I'm not going to stand up here and proclaim that there's going to be a storybook ending to what's going to take place Saturday at UFC 267. I think Glover Teixeira is going to have this Cinderella moment upended. The ball will officially be over. The glass slipper will shatter. Jan Blachowicz shall retain the light heavyweight title. He's just not the sort of guy that you are going to. Even if what you're doing is working, it's just not going to keep working for long. Adesanya had moments of success until he didn't. Dominic Reyes had a moment or two of success in that first round until he didn't. Corey Anderson won a fight against Blachowicz only to find himself floored in the first round of their rematch. Rockhold came in with a head full of steam and everybody on his side, and that didn't work out too well. And really, the only thing that's a question mark was like the Jacare fight that he won by split decision, but that was just more of a function of just not being entertaining than anything else. I don't think Glover Teixeira is going to have much of an answer for Blachowicz. All the things that Teixeira can do, Blachowicz does at a higher level right now. Maybe the power is debatable, which one of them hits harder, but Blachowicz is the guy who's going to land more consistently. He's also the guy who's going to get hit less consistently. He's the guy who's been able to initiate the grappling exchanges more consistently. And when the grappling isn't, oh, what is my son doing? Okay. All right.
He's grappling.
Oh, she's asleep. She's asleep. Oh, all right. Oh, sorry, honey. I'm sorry, baby. And not only that, like when he initiates the grappling exchanges, he does business on the ground, and there's not much relenting in that. I don't see Teixeira being able to get out of bottom position once he gets there. I don't see him withstanding an onslaught from Blachowicz, even if he's able to land a few beforehand. I think by the second round, I think we're gonna be like, yikes, this is going on, and we wish it wasn't. I love Glover Teixeira, and I would love to see him pick up a W, and this be like a story that could rival that of Michael Bisping's as far as a championship winning career arc. But it's not happening. Blachowicz retains. But the plus side for the storyline is that we've been sleeping on this man way too long, and I think Saturday will be a chance for him to cement his legacy as a champion in the UFC. So that being said, Blachowicz wins, according to all three of us. So, fellas,
if
Yep.
any of you are crazy, and this also goes to you, our lovely viewers, we love you very much. If you bet money on the parlay I spoke of, the 5-fight underdog parlay on the main card of UFC 267, if you had Teixeira, Sandhagen, Hooker, Tabora, and Li Jingliang winning all together, it is plus 100,000. You turn $100 into $100,000 if you can get that to pull out. So even though we don't necessarily think it's going to happen, $1, you can turn $1 into how much? A lot.
I'd buy that for $1.
100. Turn $1 into $100. Wow.
Yeah, I like it. All right, fellas. So that's going to do it for this edition of Unleash. Big thanks to Jay. Big thanks to Ben for holding it down. As always, you can catch them on SureDog.com. There will be fight night coverage from these two gentlemen, as well as some post-fight stuff to check out as well. So make sure that you follow their social media handles. They will update whenever their pieces get published. Of course, you can follow me on the Twitter handle below, and my work can be found on MMA On Point. So like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful. Stay positive. I don't really have anything else to add because normally I add some little catchy, but I don't. So stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.